Kong is one of the most popular API gateways to use for microservice development. It's popular because it is architecture and protocol agnostic, meaning you can use Kong in many use cases. It works for both API gateways and service meshes. It also provides a vast array of plugins, and is also possible to create your own. It is easily scalable due to its stateless architecture, meaning the configuration is not stored on the gateway itself, but in a data source. Now, is Kong free to use? Technically, yes. Kong is open source, but the enterprise version provides more features and customer support. Here are the Docker images available on Docker Hub. The Kong Enterprise container provides built-in admin GUI that makes it incredibly simple to configure services from the web browser. Previously, it was mentioned that you can extend Kong Gateway with a variety of plugins. However, a large number of them are enterprise only. That being said, the Community Edition already provides all the basic features you would need to build an API gateway. Even if you don't have access to the enterprise plugins, developers can simply create their own plugins of whatever they need and share it with the rest of the world. There's even a third-party admin GUI that you can deploy separately. We'll cover that in another video. Kong comes with two persistence models: database mode, or DB mode, and DB-less mode. DB mode, sometimes referred to as imperative mode, means that you can configure as you go. The configurations will be applied in a specific order to the gateway. There is an admin API accessible to the developer, where they can make changes to the routes as they please. Any changes made will be stored in the database. The other persistence model is called DB-less mode, otherwise known as declarative mode. All the configurations has to be written beforehand in either a YAML file or a JSON file. In this video, we will be showing you how to deploy it in database mode, as it is simpler to understand. Before anything, let's create a Docker network and call it KongNet. The second step is to deploy a database container. We will be using Postgres. Let's take advantage of the Docker DNS and name the container. Remember this name, as we will be using it later. On a side note, Kong Gateway only supports Postgres in DB mode. The minimum version required is version 9.6. You can also choose to use Cassandra, but it's been deprecated and already marked for removal. Now that the database is up and running, we need to bootstrap it, meaning we need to configure the database and initialize the tables that are required for Kong to work. We'll run the Docker image to bootstrap it. Here, we're using the Community Edition and we'll specify our Kong network as well. Next, we'll need to specify the database vendor. In this case, we're using Postgres. Of course, we'll need to tell Kong where our database is and the credentials. Note here that we're referencing the name of the container. The Docker DNS will translate the container name to whichever IP address was assigned to it. The command we are going to run is Kong migrations bootstrap. This will create all the tables we need for Kong to work. And we're only running this container once to configure our database, so we don't really need it after that. Let's just mark this for removal after it's finished running. Finally, we're going to deploy our Kong gateway. The command for this is pretty similar to what we had when we ran the migration, so let's work off of that. We actually want to keep this container running in the background, so let's not mark it for removal. We will also specify the name of the container, Kong Gateway. We don't need this container to run any commands either, so let's get rid of that. Let's export a couple of ports to work with. What do these ports do? Before going any further, it would be useful to look at the anatomy of Kong Gateway. Kong comes in two planes, the control plane and the data plane. The default ports for these planes are 8001 and 8000 respectively. The control plane is where the admin API lives. This REST API is what we'll be using in the next video to configure our services and routes. Now the data plane is what will handle all the traffic and routing. Any configuration made on the control plane will be applied to all routes passing through this plane. This plane is actually built on top of Nginx. To override the default control plane port, all you have to do is override this environment variable. When deploying it in production with HTTPS, the default listening port is 8443 and 8444. You can also override the SSL listening port here. I hope you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.